Welcome to the Mama Mudra podcast. I'm Kate Thompson-Duwe, and I believe that the wellness industry has a joy problem, so we're aiming to fix it. This podcast is where we bring in experts to challenge beliefs and tools to feel good, stay consistent, and build a life that works. Because in this community, joy is the new performance metric. Today's episode is discussing a topic that I think is extremely relevant and also quite confusing, and that is the topic of burnout. I have Alana Moyes here with me. Welcome. Because I really want to break down the fact that we've been taught that burnout is something that happens to you when you do too much, when you overload your plate, when you're not coping, when it's just, you know, the pressures of society and the things that we allow ourselves to take on when perhaps it's too much. But what if that isn't the full picture with regards to burnout? What if burnout is actually more to do with who and how we are and how we cope with what we have put on our plate versus how much we have put on our plate? I know a lot of people, and I count myself as one of them, that like to be busy. We like to do everything and take on everything. And it doesn't necessarily feel like we are killing ourselves in doing that. In fact, it feels pretty good. It feels like you're being quite productive. So is it a case of understanding your boundaries? Is it a case of understanding how different you are perhaps to the person next to you? Or, you know, where does the boundary lie? So Alana has worked with alignment and burnout. You are a published author. You have a whole program that you teach people about how to navigate this burnout. And during the course of your and my conversations about today's recording, the initial assumption from my side was kind of, you know, burnout is when you wake up that one day and you physically can't get out of bed and you're just lying in a heap on the floor and it's completely taken away your ability to function, which is only one form and like the most extreme form, I would imagine, of burnout. But the majority of burnout is more of a day-to-day. You're actually suffering from it, but you're still functioning. Is that right?
Yeah, look, I mean, the thing that we understand about burnout is that there's a certain type of person that gets burnout. And those are the high performers, the people pleasers, or a better way to look at it is people that care about the needs of others, people that want to make an impact. And it's those kind of people that put a lot of pressure on themselves. And that pressure has to go somewhere. And, you know, it's not necessarily that it's your fault. It can be like a perfect storm of your genetics, your like history, how you grew up, you know, the kind of stress that you're feeling at the moment, the diet, but it's no one thing, and it's complex, and people can have, like, as you say, it's like a spectrum, and because everybody is different and everybody's genetics is different, for some people it could show up as chronic fatigue. Other people can keep going through it. I know that you are feeling like you're just pushing through, whereas I was in bed for 3 years with it, you know? And so, yeah, it's and that's why the key is to come back to yourself so that you can be the advocate for yourself in how you find a better way forward.
And that also means if you are that person that is prone to it, that you could reach a state of burnout with far less on your plate than someone that isn't prone to it. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, there's people, we could phrase it the other way, that there's people that are super high performing and they don't burn out.
Yes, okay.
Right? And I know for me personally, the shift that happened was when I was diagnosed as ADHD as an adult. And that changed everything because I realized that my nervous system was more sensitive and that I was pushing against myself. I wasn't accommodating for myself. And I think that's what people can be doing, is looking at let's not have busy days, but how can you accommodate who you are in order to do those things?
Yeah, that's exactly what I wanted to ask next. Was it feels like burnout is kind of perceived as you've pushed too hard. You've it's your fault. You've reached past the point of your actual capabilities, and you've just now you're suffering the consequences. But am I right in saying that it's more about taking things on, sure, but not having the correct support systems in place in order to allow you to take those extra things on?
Yeah, right. So I would say it's not about the support systems. It's about how you are able to accommodate your own needs. So when you burn out, you have pushed yourself too hard.
Yeah.
But it's not a question of the goals you were going after or the busy day. It's how you went after those things in a way that serves you, that didn't cause you strain. For example, say you're an introvert.
Yes.
And you're in meetings all day. You're expected to kind of speak up in meetings, and that's how you're going to progress in life. But it's not your nature to be an introvert, to be an extrovert, right?
Yes.
So you need to be self-aware enough to say, look, that is not my area of excellence. And then you need to take some steps that help you to really, say you want to be the CEO. You've got to figure out how an introvert gets there. And it's not by shouting in the meetings.
Yeah.
It's by being yourself. And maybe I would say explaining to people that you're an introvert. That's actually what one of my leaders did. She's now VP in a major global corporation because she said, this is who I am and these are the steps I need to take.
That's so interesting. It's so interesting because it makes so much sense. I mean, I remember when I started working in agencies, for over 2 decades, I was in marketing and PR. And you would, especially in the bigger ad agencies, you'd have to do those tests. I can't even remember what they're called, that kind of identifies your personality and which teams you'd fit in best with, what type of a leader, what type of, et cetera, et cetera. And this kind of feels to me like it's actually, it really had its place. I don't even think they do it anymore, but that kind of feels like something that, for those reasons, really makes sense in order to understand that you can't just come in as a job title, but you're coming in as a job title and a personality type as well.
Yeah, as a human being.
As a human being, exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you talk a lot about meeting people where they're at and, sort of understanding everything you've just said in order to navigate functional burnout. Not burnout, it is a thing, but you know what I mean? Functional burnout and continuing, because not everyone has the luxury of just being able to say, okay, I'm just going to drop out for 3 months and, allow my nervous system to reset. So what does it look like to find someone or have someone find you, meet them where they're at and work with them?
Yep. So this is the best part of the work I do. It's a remembering of who you are, and really I just show up as a reflector for the people I work with. But yeah, I think we just want to fit a box. It feels easier to show up and fit in with everyone and hide the pieces of ourselves that don't make sense. But really meeting someone where they're at is first of all learning to be self-aware. That's the skill that we develop. And then second of all, being embodied in that. So I can go into more detail if you'd like.
Sure.
Yeah, so for self-awareness, we look at, okay, what are we connecting to about ourselves? And biologically, our thoughts are biological moments. They're not something happening in the ether.
Yes.
When you have a thought, there's a chemical reaction in the brain. Maybe you have a stressful thought that sends cortisol. I mean, I'm simplifying here. Cortisol into the body. You have an emotional response. So that's also a biological moment. So we know that this is neuroscience, that our thoughts and emotions are biological moments.
Yes.
And so when you strip those away, and then when you go and do a mindfulness 101,
Yes.
and they say to you, ask yourself, who am I? And you say, oh, I'm a mother, I'm a podcaster, I'm this, I'm that. And they ask you to strip away all your titles. And you're kind of left with just a sense of self. That's the sense that we start with as a foundation. Okay? So you have the sense of self. I mean, Eckhart Tolle talks about it too. Do you remember when he said he was close to giving up? And I think he was saying, I'm sick of myself.
I
right?
haven't read Eckhart Tolle in years, but yes.
Yeah. He said, I'm sick of myself.
Yes.
And then what he did was he separated. He was like, what am I sick of?
Yes.
And there's this version that's a witness to the self that you're sick of. So we start with that foundation, and that's self-awareness, right? So once you have that, you can start to witness the narrative of your life, your beliefs, your patterns. And that's how we meet someone where they're at, is they meet themselves. They remember something that they can't label, something that they can't, just something that allows them to become a witness and not so enmeshed in everything that they experience in life.
Yeah. You speak a lot about the analogy of a fish climbing a tree, which I love.
Yeah.
Judging a fish, rather, by its ability to climb a tree.
Yeah.
And it feeling like failure because it can't, when actually it's obviously obvious to anyone from the outside looking in.
Yeah.
It's pure misalignment.
Yeah.
So how often do you think that this is, I mean, this is obviously everything that you're talking about, but how prevalent do you think that is in modern day life, especially with regards to what you were just speaking about and one's sense of self? Because I think that the vast majority of us, our sense of self, if we were really honest and we had the time, or we gave ourselves the time to sit and break that down. I'm doing that quite a lot at the moment with regards to business identities, and it's a very strong analogy to looking at oneself as well, because as we get older and older and older, and we do more things and we have more achievements and more failures, that becomes our sense of self, but it's not. So how often and how prevalent is it, do you think, in modern day, that there are so many people walking around that think that their self is their title and they think that their self is their achievement, when actually that couldn't be further from the truth in terms of their real self?
Yeah. So I'm always cautious to kind of speak to what the whole of society experiences.
Okay, fair enough.
But I would say that we can see that people are struggling. We can see the stats. There's loneliness epidemics. In Europe, they have burnout accommodations leave for at the major corporations. That's how prevalent it is. So if we look at those sort of stats, we can say that the majority of adults are not really feeling like themselves. And if we go back to that sense of, I mean, you were painting this beautiful picture, and it is a picture, right, of the achievements, of your sense of identity, of who you are. And we say that could all be stripped at any point. And what are you left with? And if all you attach yourself to is that kind of intellect without being embodied, it's not real. It is real, obviously, but it's not serving you if your body doesn't say yes to it, if your body's not participating in a way that is healthy.
So for anyone listening to this, because again, like I said, it's about having the time and giving yourself the time. I think we're all so guilty of, I don't have the time for that. I don't know, I'm too busy, but yet you find the time to doom scroll for sort of 2 to 3 hours a day, and like, if you gave yourself that time, you would really have the time to do, sort of this type of work. So for anyone listening that doesn't think that they have the time to do this type of work for themselves, but is feeling like this is resonating somehow.
Yes.
Are there any kind of, I don't know, like, if our body is our source of truth and our source of a lot of trauma as well, is there anything that you could kind of tell people to look out for, that if they think this is resonating, but also, are there ways that the body is potentially trying to show them, listen, we're not there. I know you think that you're not it. Like we're really not happy. Like, we're not coping.
Yeah.
But you are that person that lives so much in your head. And I speak from like years and years of experience. And I know how easy it is to completely shut the rest of you off and just be like, we're doing amazing, even though you're really, really not. What would be the signs that you would suggest that someone could look out for that would maybe allow them to think, let me maybe think this through, because I'm clearly not that succeeding as well as I think that I am?
Sure. Yeah. So a sense check.
Yes.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, that's a much better way to say it.
Yeah. So I think.
Question that I just asked.
No, I loved. It's nice listening to you. So I think, but there are ways. So if you feel numb.
Yes. Emotionally. Yes.
Or the other side of that is you're just reactive.
Okay.
You're kind of like shocked by the way we want to be responding to life. We don't want to be reacting. Then if you're just tired, if you feel like you're constantly chasing your tail, if you're overwhelmed. And there's so many layers to the human experience. So we could say like, that's anxiety and I have a disorder and blah, blah, blah. But if you're not feeling good in the life that you're creating. And I can tell you from experience that I also find it really hard to be there's a saying, it's like disciplined is almost like a closed fist, but devotion is more like loving. That devotion of coming back to yourself is a pain. I think we dissociate because emotions are messy. And the intellect is allowing us to dream and create and build and strive, and it's so cool out there. But coming back into a body as an adult when you haven't been given the skills to process, I can't say I always enjoy it, but I think if you look at it like an outcome-based thing, which I think a lot of business people do, if you're not brushing your teeth, you're going to get cavities. So you have to look at yourself. Look at me as a cautionary tale. You don't want to spend 3 years in bed. And that's not to say everyone's going to end up like that. But you want to feel good in your moments. You want to feel good stepping into success.
So talk us through what happened to you, because I think it's always interesting for people. It's one thing, and it's incredibly insightful and useful to listen to a subject expert speak about their area of expertise, and in order to try and learn from that. But it's a lot more relatable to, hear from someone that went down probably the hardest version of this road. So talk us through.
Yes, so I will, but I'm not sure you want to, it is relevant, so I'm just saying that now before I answer. Okay. So my first burnout was after a startup that Assembly Radio, and we were burning the midnight oil, pushing like boundaries, very innovative, but we were struggling to make money. And for the stress, I just did not know that the stress was having that much of an impact on me. And I just started to not recognize myself. I was reactive. I wasn't getting on with my business partner. I wasn't enjoying it. I felt desperately unhappy. My partner at home, it was just, we weren't gelling. And then I started to develop severe anxiety. And I sold my shares in the business and went off and did yoga. And that's it's such a stereotype. How many burnt out women go and do yoga teacher training?
It's a stereotype because it works. It
right?
helps. Yeah.
But you know what? As I progressed, as I became a mother, I recognized that wasn't what I wanted to do. I didn't want to escape. I love yoga, but I wanted to be embedded in society.
Yes.
And I think that's big part of why I've developed what I developed. My second burnout was after my son was born, and he was prem. He's complex autistic. We didn't know what was going on. So there was a lot of, that's one of the things where we say it's a genetic component where I was predisposed, but also life was just intense. And I basically just for like 6 years just gave my life force to him again without recognizing or there wasn't an awareness of how far it could lead me down. And then when it did, I just had constant migraines, and I just had such bad fatigue, and it was humbling, deeply humbling.
And how did you get yourself through and out of that to where you are today?
Well, I was fighting against myself for a long time because I just thought I was to blame. And I felt so much shame. And I was just like, why can't I achieve these things that I'm dreaming of? Why do I keep falling down? But then I started to recognize, which is that I love that part of myself that is wanting to make an impact, that wants to be busy and dedicated. And, I'm so excited about the way the world's going. And I just started to explore how I could do those things without them causing me harm. And I did. I found that it was about the decisions I was making. As long as my body said yes and I felt grounded and present, I could move forward with it. Because I was lucky, because anything that wasn't good for my body, I would be in bed for like 3 months again. So I had
that barometer.
I had a real litmus test.
That's so interesting. I find that it's I think it's a lot to do with getting older, which I love, but at the same time, as a mom as well, I really want to, and I think that's kind of subconsciously becoming a goal with this whole journey for me, is I'm so interested in it. It comes up in so many of these conversations in finding a way to impart this level of insight and knowledge into ourselves to younger people, because it's very easy to start understanding yourself more and more as you hit 40 and above. And it's wonderful. And that's one of the best parts about getting older is, that ability to really know yourself well enough that you can see when you're harming yourself, when you need to take a step back or down or whatever, when something that used to serve you even last week isn't serving you anymore, et cetera, et cetera. But I find that I wish that there were a way to share that level of knowledge with my children, so that they don't have to go through those really hard life moments. I don't want to protect them from everything, but you know what I'm trying to say.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I love that you're thinking that way. And I think I know kids are social learners.
Yes.
Right? I've also taught kids yoga, and they have a BS detector.
Yes.
You can't talk woo-woo to them.
Yeah.
And I think when you show them something authentically, they're going to catch on. But what I believe is, I was listening to some of the comrades runners and how they talk about those walls that they reach and how they push through it. And it's such an exciting thing of like that mind over matter. Anyone that gets through, gets through it. And I think anyone that's a burnout temperament is closely aligned to that. Like we know we can mind over matter things.
Exactly.
So what I think that the kids and what we can be doing is those comrades runners start a training. They train for the marathon, right?
Sure.
So they're prepared for that like epic battle with themselves. And then when they finish, they rest. They let their bodies regroup. They nourish themselves, right?
The burnout one doesn't. You just keep pushing.
We're just constantly running a comrades marathon.
Yes.
So what I think is kids should be learning how to be self-aware. It's not emotional intelligence, because that's understanding the world and the emotions around you. Self-awareness, how I'm feeling.
Yes.
And how to be ready for the comrades marathon. How to know when you're in the comrades marathon. How to know when it's time to rest.
Yes. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Can you tell us about, obviously I'm not asking you to tell us about anyone's journey or anyone's story or anything, because you can't, but
No.
Have there been experiences that you've had with people that you've worked with? And if you can tell us a little bit about that in that sort of, regard, because exactly as you were saying just now with the Comrades Marathon analogy, I'm like, you're like, oh, you hit the wall and you push through. And I'm like, yeah, but like that for me is kind of what I was an expert at, but not necessarily because it was good for me. In fact, was probably the opposite. So, firstly, how do you differentiate when you're working with someone, and, how do you identify not being, inside them and not knowing them that well, that you can see, hold on, actually, maybe you shouldn't be pushing through this wall. Maybe this wall is telling you to take a step back. And when that happened, what was the process? Like, do you sort of work with people and have a big moment of breakthrough, or is it kind of a very slow, organic learning process? Kind of like talk me through the actual, the sort of the practical application.
Yeah, so I'd say if I was going to sort of give cliff notes, probably is the best way to say it, is there's always a wall that we hit around taking time for yourself. That's like that's where the friction comes in, and it's something that, I don't want to make a incorrect, but like when an addict has to realize that they're an addict.
Yes.
I'm not saying that we're addicts,
that
but
moment of realization.
Yeah. And that's really a friction point for a lot of people that are high achievers.
Yes.
And I myself struggle with it.
Yeah.
It's just like, it feels like I'm being chained down.
Yeah.
So that's something that happens. Then I always see the moment when they realize, when we've put all the pieces of them together and they have this picture of it, and then we've gotten strategic about how they're going to share that with the world, there's like this relief. And for me, it's deeply affirming when I see that, because it's just so sad that we've all been taught that we have to hide these pieces of ourselves. Yeah,
completely. I talk a lot about how I think we've created this image of success that actually makes us so bloody miserable that it's like, it's all about the external and it's all about achievements and material possessions and status and all of these different things, but it's got nothing to do with inside. Like, you can be literally crying on the inside all day, every day, but as long as the external looks amazing, the facade looks good, you're successful. And that's really, really not a great indicator of society.
Yeah, and if you've never experienced what it feels like to be connected to yourself, like the way I can explain it is, it feels like fullness.
Yes.
And it feels like
Yes.
that strain is gone for me.
Yes.
So if you've never felt that, it's also not something that you're striving for. So yeah.
So in closing, because I feel like this is a conversation that could go on forever, because it's so interesting, because there's such a dichotomy to it, which is how I want to end the discussion, because like you said, it's the sense of fullness. So for me, when I was feeling my most burnt out was when I was probably at the same level of productivity as I am now, trying to do as much as I am now, with children even younger then, obviously, which is harder. But it wasn't my true purpose. I was doing it for someone else. It wasn't my own business. I was doing it purely for the paycheck. There were moments that I loved, but it wasn't really my purpose, which was definitely detrimental to my health. Versus now, and I actually had someone that I'm very close to say to me the other day, didn't you say a couple of years ago that you would never put yourself in the situation again? And it kind of sounds like you're there. But because I feel such a sense of purpose now, I don't feel like I'm pushing too hard, or I'm not scared to take more on. So my question to you is, and it's probably a difficult one to answer, obviously having a strong sense of purpose kind of negates the risk of burnout to a certain extent, or it widens your capacity to be able to take things on. But when does it become risky to keep on doing something because it feels so amazing, because you believe in it and it's your purpose? But surely if you're still one of those people that are at risk of burnout, you still are running the risk of burning out. Does that make any sense?
It does. And to be honest, I think that what you've just spoken about explains it better than anything. It's coming from you. And we always equate purpose to, quitting the corporate game.
Yes. Yeah.
Right? And that's what I was always so fearful of, is that if I found this connection in my mind and body, was I not going to be able to earn money? Have you ever heard of Ikigai?
Yes, of course. Your Japanese, your sense of purpose, what you wake up for.
Yeah,
yes.
And it's a balance, right?
Yes.
It's a balance of being able to earn what you love, what the world needs, what you're good at.
Yes.
So I think what you've just said is that because you are connected to yourself, you can do the same things. So you're fearful. We're always going to be fearful that we burn out, but it doesn't sound to me like you're on that path.
It's so true. So it's the balance of it's not just the focus on earning, it's also giving back and also serving yourself. Yeah.
Yes, and I take on jobs that I never would have in the past, but it's because of my sense of self, and I step into the job saying, this is who I am, this is what I bring, and I'm not scared of it anymore,
I think that's a really good place to end. Good. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed this conversation, and I hope that everyone else watching did too. And I think the outtake for me is that success should not be seen as something that costs you anything in terms of health or mental peace or clarity. Ultimately, it should all work together to ensure that you are living a successful life, not just on the outside, but also inside. So if you enjoyed this episode, like it, share it with everyone, please. Subscribe and get everyone else to subscribe too. And thank you so much for listening. If this episode shifted something with you, share it with someone who needs it. Because the wellness industry doesn't change from the top down. It changes through conversations like these. So like, subscribe, and stay close. We're not chasing wellness anymore. We're redefining it through joy. See you next week.